Cracking, everybody. I'm GG. You tuned in to the Green Gorilla channel. It's the place where black men can say what they want, man. So shout out to all the haters out there. I know y'all lurking. Also, man, when you come in, please make sure to like the video. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, consider it. And if you do subscribe, hit the bell notification button so you can stay on top of what's going on, man. And as I always do, I want to give a shout out to all the members of the Green Gorilla channel. And then I'll be going on with the show. So anyway, man, shout out to Cutting Up with the Jones, Void Be Free, Zango 1, Cornelius Bellamy, Sherlin Woe, Salty Balls, Mike Johnston, No Sleep, Inherently Enthusiastic, Tell Toya, Jazz Deck, and Brotherly Love 215. Big up to y'all. Big up to Divine Love, Rears, Timothy Blewett, G-Star, Heru, and the Apocalypse, Ted Gunderson, Outside the Cube, Gerard Shelton, Rais Muajid, Wild Bear, and Sunrise. Big up. Big up to Barnolis, BGS Ibmore, FA4L, Andre 416, Mantis on Break, Lock Vegas, Bimrock, Damian H, Passport OG, Dr. Tiasan Johnson, Rasheed Barnes, and Blacksword 404. Big up. Big up to Leon, Artisan MC, Dub Will, Mr. Good Dad, Third Coast X, Michael Ross, 63rd Samurai, Ishmael Shamad, The Watcher, and Hostile Adept. Big up. Big up to the Ruthless, Heartless Revelator, Kill the Game, Dr. Thunder, Jason Hales, Charles Finney, Interesting Thought, The Silent Warrior, Naomi Gary, J. Cleveland Green, The Toxic Black Masculinist, and Pulpit 28. Big up. Shout out to Larry R, Seth Sun, Afro Troop, Show Me, Spain Man, 7th Coast Dojo, Anthony Davis, I'm Just Jules, Ricky Dawson, Stefan, and True 7360. Big up. Also, shout out to Mr. Me Too, Call for President, Gold Professor, AKs and Curtains, H-Town, Roguish the Billmonger, Adrian Thomas, Electrician 480, Binga, D. Scott, and Path Guy 74. Big up. Also, shout out to Pete Rock, Aaron Peters, Vince Lindsay, Quiz the Poet, Black Wizard, ADOS, Shadow Observer, Troy Warren, Mrs. KP Bailey, Alan Wiley, The Face, and Life of Commerce. Big up. Big up to AI Apostle, Jeffrey Speed, Marvin Battle Jr., Adam Ignatz Mouse, Dr. Tree, 77 Base X, Brian McMurray, and K-Ron S. Big up. Can't forget Charles Rogers, Rick Ross, Sandra Jean 955, Charles Gilmore, Greg, Barry Little, Mr. Valentino, Dr. Rock, Mark Swift, Odd Collard, Donald Watts, Coach Hotep, and Mr. Blue Collar. Big up. Can't forget TD Hip Hop Media, Drew Main, Mr. Heat, Sir Anthony, MLR, Universal 178, Aaron Smith, DHA Double, Kalanja Kala, and WPR 1. Also, I can't forget the brothers in the Ethereal Plane, David Carroll, Forrest Windu, and Kevin Samuels. Big up to those people, man. And also, I'd like to give a shout out to all of the people who support me on Patreon. Big up to them as well. Shout out to Frank Black, Robert Wicks, Shine Language, Chris Flowers, Christopher Burton, Daxby the Tetrahedron, J Live, Keith Bass Jr., Nick Albert C., Dr. Ben Vincent, Waffle Weave, Darnell Smith, Excalibur, Preserve Prisoner, Taz, Dragon 59, Jay Bailey, Momal, and Asangwa. Thank you so much for all of your ongoing support. Appreciate it. You deserve a round of applause. Thank you so much for your ongoing support. I thank you, each and every one of you. And if you're considering supporting the Green Gorilla channel because you like what's being done here, here's how you do it, and I'll be back with the show. What's good, everybody? I'm the G with a PhD, and you're tuned in to the Green Gorilla channel, the place where black men can express themselves freely. Straight up, no chaser. Today, I want to introduce you to my new membership program that consists of 5 levels where you can invest in the Green Gorilla channel on a monthly basis and receive level-specific perks. Memberships are special because they improve the quality of the content of the channel and will help me to be able to keep the channel going. Now, to participate in the Green Gorilla channel membership program, all you have to do is hit the join button, which is located right next to the subscribe button on my channel page. Now, for all of my subscribers who decide not to participate in my membership program, nothing will change. The content will keep coming the way it always has. Thanks for watching, and be careful out here, people. Bless. All right, man, we're back. I'm Gigi. You're tuned in to the Green Gorilla channel. It's the place where black men can express themselves freely, straight up with no chasers. I brought a guest along. His name is BGS. You know who he is. What's cracking?
Hey, what's up, Doc?
What's going on with you, man? How are you today?
Pretty good, pretty good.
I just got through watching the tail end of your show. I didn't really chime in or anything like that, but yeah, good work as always.
Yeah, a little mixed bag. A little mixed bag. So today, man, we're going to talk a little bit about the labor theory of value and property. And you sent me a video, right? Yeah.
I don't know who else you sent the video to, but I think the video was targeted towards me. Am I wrong about this, or am I right about this?
You and Mr. Z, because he's a lefty and he likes theories on socialism and stuff like that. But I think when they mentioned Locke, I said, okay, well, this is Gigi's wheelhouse.
Yeah, it definitely is. And so, let's just go over this video that you sent me. We're going to react to it up to a certain point, and then I'll kind of take over. And then, like, I don't know what your thoughts about Marxism are. I haven't really probed your brain in that regard.
It was a necessary component because industrial capitalism was really, really harsh. It's really almost akin to slavery. Working 16 hours a day, and then 6 days a week, and all the injuries, and working your children to death, and all that kind of stuff. Where I think they said the average age of a man in the industrial parts of Northern Europe was like maybe 18, 19, and maybe even 20. They died early, so it was pretty harsh. So they needed something, and the only balance to the whole endeavor to actually keep capitalism going was actually Marxism or socialism. So they, Marx never called himself a Marxist. He called himself a socialist, which is really what it was, more like a radical form of socialism, which is Marxism. That's the way I gather from it.
So that's your take on it.
Yes.
Okay. So it's a necessary measure to stop the excesses of industrial capitalism.
Yes.
Run amok. So that's the viewpoint. Okay, I get it. Okay. Yeah. Before we even go there, I want to do some shouting out to some people who have supported me. Salty Balls, as always, thank you so much, sir. Shout out to Volcanus, he says, greetings, GG and chat. Shout out to Joe from DC, he says, donation for the theory you talked about, woman behavior into law. I'm assuming he's talking about you. I don't remember myself talking about that, but maybe I did. I don't know.
You probably have.
But shout out to Joe from DC. Shout out to John Jones. He says, I have 1 degree, 2 trades, and a driver's license, so I can do Instacart and etc. I need my wage.
That's from last show. Yeah. You need your wage.
No, that's right. And shout out to Salty Balls. He says, thine art, she heathens and holetarians.
You ain't shit, Salty.
Hold on. Hey, Julius, man. Hey, bro. I'm doing a stream, bro.
Oh, my bad, dog. My bad. Go ahead and handle your business. I'll talk to you later.
Rue. Yeah, so just in case people think I have no real friends out there and shit, I do have like real friends. You know what I'm saying? So
you are a real person, okay?
Right, but that guy, man, like that's my nigga right there. He's a millionaire.
Okay,
you know what I'm saying? I am not. Okay,
yet.
But he is. Okay, yeah. He's one of my best friends. But he's paid. You know what I'm saying? But nothing to the extent to which he's paid is me. I'm the whole different type of motherfucker. So, anyway, Salty Ball says, thine art, she heathens are holetarians of whom engage in classless warfare against our brethren in actual worth. One cannot distinguish the bourgeoisie from thine lower classes given thine actions. Yeah, Salty Balls, man, you a motherfucker, man. I can see you at the bar right now talking a whole bunch of shit. You know what I mean? I can see him right now. And shout out to Woody Mac 73 says, big ups to you, GG and BGS. Big ups also to the guys in the chat. Love the content. Keep up the great work. So anyway, man, I'm going to make myself bigger here Of course, not because I believe that I am bigger than anybody or should occupy a paramount position over and above anyone else, but just so we can see the video, okay? And up to a certain point, I'm going to stop the video, okay? But at any time that you want to make a comment or something like that, because we don't have to go for like 2 hours today. This should be like an hour and 15 minutes at the most.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Because I'm opening up space for, because I think Dr. Johnson's going on a little bit later, okay? And I want to open up space for him. You feel me?
Mm-hmm.
So having said that, man, let's just go ahead and get into this video, which I thought, I think the initial parts of the video were good. I don't know if I so much like the latter part of the video. And the video is very long, so we're not going to get to all of it anyway.
Right.
It's 30 minutes long, so we're not going to get to all that. But I do think that the video, especially when he talks about Locke, I think he was spot on, okay?
Okay.
So let's go to it. Let's get to it.
Hey, what's up, everyone? So, Marxism. I've talked about Marxism a lot on this channel, but so far it's been almost entirely about adapted versions of Marxism. So to bring things full circle, I'm going to spend a video dedicated almost entirely to classical Marxism, as developed by Karl Marx and his collaborator Friedrich Engels. So most of this video is going to be about their theory and their work. At the very end, I'll circle back out and say some things about adapted versions of Marxism and the term Marxism generally speaking. I hope you're ready, because it's going to be a ride.
Now,
Okay, so this is generally considered...
Before we even begin, man, look, this is a nerdy white dude, okay?
Yeah.
To me, he seems like he's part of BreadTube or some shit like that. I mean, I don't know if he's specifically that way, but it seems like that would be like part of his target audience. You know, the people who watch those kind of videos would probably watch his kind of videos.
Yeah. He does seem like a BreadTube guy, you know, even though he didn't explicitly say that.
Yeah, so I'm not saying he is, but I mean, that would probably, the demographic that watches those kind of videos probably would watch this kind of video.
Yep.
Okay. So anyway, let me push through this.
Marx's first major piece of writing, the Economic and Philosophical Manuscripts of 1844, which Karl Marx wrote in his mid-20s. And I think a good spot to start with his theory is to look at the first thing he says. We have begun from the presuppositions of political economy. We have accepted its terminology and its laws. And then he lists a bunch of terms. And look at the first term that he lists, private property. If we're going to do a decent job of talking about classical Marxism, we need to talk about what he means by property here, because he's not using it in the sense that we normally think about it. And it's crucial to his work. I mean, look, he referenced it 5 more times just on this page. By property, Marx didn't mean just a plot of land.
He's right there, okay? Just so if anybody, you know, wants to dispute it, he's accurate in his assessment about what Marx is talking about in relation to private property. When you think of property, you typically think about land or a house, a car, you know, like some sort of material object, which, I mean, to some extent, all property has those kind of qualifications to a certain extent. But I mean, it's something more broad. So, of course, John Locke is a philosopher. Karl Marx also is a philosopher. And so they're talking about it in a more broad way. But do you got any thoughts about that?
Yeah, because, you know, over time, sometimes the meaning of what somebody wrote kind of loses its definition. Like what property was meant by Locke compared to what it is now is probably not two different things, but pretty far away. Like even I think even during the colonization period, property meant physical land property. Okay. So the definitions are different, even though they used it. Remember, because what is it? Locke said life, liberty. What was it? What was they used in the Declaration of Independence? Life, liberty,
life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Yeah, and Locke said the pursuit of property.
Yeah, so it's life, liberty, and property for Locke.
For Locke, yeah. But the definitions are different. So when you read it, it doesn't make sense how the two can actually coalesce. But go ahead.
But I have a theory about this. Now, one of the things that you got to be mindful of, I like Locke to a certain extent. I think, you know, most of what Locke wrote, I think most of the people in the social contract tradition, they wrote fiction. Okay.
Okay.
Not to say that I don't I don't understand that rights are valuable in terms of political constructions that assign responsibilities and duties to citizens.
Yeah.
So I think that society needs to delineate a set of rights and a set of obligations and duties that people have to one another. I think that's necessary. Now, do I think that there's something called natural rights? Quite frankly, I don't think that's I don't think it's the case. Okay, that's just my viewpoint. Okay, and I share that in common with Marx, but for different reasons. But I think that, like, if you would have asked me like about the state of nature, I would tell you, that like human beings don't exist individually within it.
No, they don't.
It's impossible. Like, I mean, first and foremost, as a human person, like when you're first born, you're a fucking bundle of nothing. You're just a big soft ass baby.
Right.
And you can't survive on your own. And you need to be suckled for at least how many months before you even begin to cut teeth?
Oh, it's about cut teeth. The first tooth about what? At least 10 months. At least.
So we're talking about pretty much a creature who's useless, can't walk until well after what, 6-7 months.
Yeah.
You don't have teeth.
Yeah.
You don't have the ability. Like, there are some species of organisms, right, that when they're born, even mammals that are born, they can walk.
They walk. They have to walk, otherwise they're dead.
Like
They
a
have to walk
horse,
within
like
hours.
I don't know what a baby horse is called. I just don't know. But I mean,
Colts,
they're born walking.
Yeah.
Sheep are born walking.
Right.
Okay? Human beings, when they're born, they cannot do a damn thing. Okay? So, first and foremost, human beings don't exist as individuals. But some species, like reptiles, if they're born like in a pool of water or something like that, they're ready to go.
Yeah.
Right? But for us, the state of nature is something different. We live in, at the minimum, families. But even families amongst humans, there's no family that exists apart from other families.
No. The clan is the basic unit.
The clan is the basic unit of human existence and has been that way from like time immemorial. I'm talking about tens of thousands of years. Okay? There are no human beings that exist in the state of nature at war. I mean, maybe tribes are at war with each other, but like individual humans, no, it's a fiction. That's why I explain it in that way. But having said all that, I think that Locke gets some things right though. Okay, there's some things that I admire about what he says. So let's get to that. But before I do, I want to shout out Volcanus again. He says, "Greeting to the master teacher BGS." So that's for you. Shout out to you for that. Okay?
Appreciate you.
And shout out to David White. He says, always supporting the G with the PhD. That's for me. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Okay. And then shout out to Mississippi Delta guy. Appreciate you, sir. Anytime I see one of those, man, I want to give a fanfare, but I can't do it right this minute because we need to get through this. Okay.
Okay.
So shout out to you. I am acknowledging you, man. Thank you, sir. So at any rate, let's see what he says about Locke.
He was using the term in a broader sense, in the sense that John Locke talked about it all the way back in the 1600s in 2 treatises of government. Specifically in the second treatise, Locke talked about how when we put our work into something, and he specifically gave the example of putting our work into something natural, we transform it, and in that transformation, we're putting an essence of ourselves into that thing. So say, for example, if you break a branch off of a tree, and then you sharpen that branch into a spear, you're transforming that branch through your work, and in doing it, you're putting an essence of yourself into it, like in the form of craftsmanship. This is Locke talking about that process, but giving the example of acorns and apples. So just the process of gathering acorns and apples here counts as transformative labor. That labor put a distinction between them and common. That added something to them more than nature. So property here means the products of our labor, or you could say the fruits of our labor. And John Locke was arguing that we naturally feel a sense of ownership over that property because we've put work into it and there's an essence of ourselves in it. So he was saying that it would be wrong for a government to come claim that property, and instead the government should do the opposite. The government should protect the rights of its citizens to own private property. So I
think that that's accurate. Okay, in his assessment of what he says about Locke. Okay.
Okay.
Now, the one thing you have to be mindful of is that, again, I think that the whole concept or the idea, the heuristic device entitled "The State of Nature," it's a construction created by philosophers because, I mean, it's a way to talk about natural rights as opposed to divine rights. Okay, because prior to this, this establishment of this construct, it was argued that kings have divine right to rule and have dominion over their subjects. Okay.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So who gives you this right? God.
God. Yeah.
Okay. And the property is not yours. The property is the king's. Mm-hmm. Okay. So, which I think also is a construct. Okay. But above and beyond anything else, I think all he's trying to articulate is this: you own yourself. I mean, if anybody owns anybody, you own you.
Yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And you also own what you produce. You own the work that you put into things. Okay. So, let's say, for example, I go out, like he says, I go out and I gather a bunch of apples. Those are my apples. Okay. If I go out and gather acorns, for what, I mean, whatever you can use acorns for, I mean, I guess. But the whole point, those are mine. Mm-hmm. Okay. If I make a table, like if I chop wood and I make a table, that's my table because I made it with my own hands. I put my energy, my effort into it. It's mine. Okay. That's the essence of private property. Like you putting your agency, your labor, your skill into something that's undeveloped and uncultivated, and thereby placing value into it and putting a personal touch on it. A part of your spirit, so to speak, has been imparted in the object. Now, this is not how we perceive property today. I mean, property today, for us is merely transactional. If
Right.
I can buy it, it's mine.
Yeah. Yep.
You get what I'm saying? Like I bought it. You don't have to put any labor into it at all. All you got to do is just have the money in order to pay for the shit, and it's yours. Okay. But they're thinking about something different. Now, of course, I'm gonna let them speak for a little while longer. But you can see how Marx would take this idea and utilize it because, I mean, to us, we think that private property, like nobody should fuck with our property, right?
Right.
I don't think Marx thinks that people should fuck with our property either, but then, I think he takes a step in the wrong direction by trying to, get rid of private property altogether. Because I think at the heart of his theory is the concept of private property, which he ultimately ends up discarding, which I think is a bad move. But that's just my opinion. You want to add anything to that at all?
No. This is your wheelhouse, and I'm learning from you.
But you got to, talk to me, confirm or deny.
The thing is, if in a clan, in a Native American clan or any clan, right, what you pick, what you produce, what you make is your possession, right, which is your property. So I think, I think that's what that's what Locke means. Okay, your possessions that you make, that you put your energy into or collect, that belongs to you, even in a collective like a clan, right? Even though the land doesn't belong to you, if you make your house, that's your house, okay? If you make a spear that they will recognize that possession belongs to you. If you gather food or hunt, or you can share, but thing is, if you kill it, that belongs to you, okay?
Right.
It's yours to share. It's yours to give. It's yours to distribute the way you want to. And we, like I said, this modern times, it's gone into transactional, theory, which is property, right? So in other words, you make money, or you gather the means of trade, which is money, which is cash, okay, and that represents the fruits of your labor, and you pay for or trade with the world, or trade with the government, trade with whoever who builds a house, in trade just fruits of their labor for the fruits of your labor. So it gets more complex.
Yeah, but one of the things, okay, I don't know if he's going to state it here. But that's why
Okay.
I'm not trying to let the cat out of the bag.
Okay.
I watched this one time,
Okay.
so I can't recall if he gets into the whole concept of the law of the commons,
Right.
The introduction of money, and how it
Right.
changes the concept of the law of commons,
Right.
and the concept of appropriation in general.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna let it play for about two minutes, and then I'm gonna see what he says. And if he
Okay.
doesn't say anything about it, I'm gonna give some of my own commentary.
Okay.
People talk about John Locke's life, liberty, and property. That's the property that they're talking about. In Locke's words, every man has a property in his own person.
Yeah,
This nobody has any right to but himself.
true.
The labor of his body and the work of his hands, we may say, are properly his. Whatsoever, then, he removes out of the state that nature hath provided, and left it in, he hath mixed his labor with, and joined to it something that is his own, and thereby makes it his property.
Right.
But that was in the late 1600s. Marx was thinking about these things in the mid 1800s in industrialized Western Europe.
Okay, so let me stop there, and I want to shout some people out. Shout out to Dr. Neil. He says for the Black Man University. Boy, that man come up with
BMU.
Boy, you something else, man. This dude wild, man. There's no, I mean, this man comes up with thousands of terms, man, like neologisms. But shout out to Ron, man. Shout out to Ron, man. Dr. Ron O'Neill, man. Also, shout out to Mississippi Delta guy again. He says, in high school, I had a good black male history teacher that taught about John Locke, American history, civics, American government, and a pro-black view. Do students get such education now in school?
No.
Likely not. Okay. Likely not. Shout out to Be About Police and Pleasure. Appreciate that new membership, sir. Appreciate that. Welcome aboard, man. Welcome aboard. Shout out to Salty Balls again. He says, Woman Manifesto 2. A great party emerged, a union of working girls. Their mighty banner is red in color, bestowed with a bonnet, tattoo stars about thy bosom, and a, I don't know what that, and a knife with slashed tires.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are all united by a phantom phallus.
Shout out to the coffee girls. Okay.
Shout out to the coffee girls, man. Shout out. That dude, wow, man. And shout out to Dr. Thunder, man. Shout out to Dr. Thunder. Yeah, he says, here to soak up the knowledge, bro. Salute. Salute to you, sir. Shout out to Dr. Thunder, okay? Here's the thing about John Locke's concept of property, okay? And, now, of course, the guy just read from the 2 Treatises of Government, which is Locke's second treatise, right?
Yeah.
And specifically, I mean, where he talks about property, right? Because property rights for him are grounded in his belief in the natural law and natural rights. Right. So property, his theory of property holds that ownership is acquired through mixing your labor, okay, with nature. If someone takes a previously unowned object from the common state of nature and mixes their labor with it, such by cultivating land or mining a resource, they have a natural right to own that object. And you talked about this even like with a tribal culture, right?
Right.
But here's the issue, the problem I have with it, right? So like a Native American tribe might not own, have the idea that you can just take the land, like this is yours.
Right.
Now, even in England, prior to the establishment of this whole concept of natural rights and property, or private property, the king owned the land. You that's not your shit. Yeah. It's not yours.
Yeah.
Okay. Now you might be allotted a portion of it to work, or he might, give it to you, apportion it to you for a short period of time. But ultimately, that's not your property.
Right.
Okay. In the way that we think of it today, and in many instances, like. There are laws today that exist on the books to where, like, the government, if they decide that, like, your property is valuable enough, they'll come take it.
Oh, yeah, they do. Yeah.
It's called one of the ways they do it is eminent domain.
Right, which still means the king owns all the land. Okay.
But I mean, but you see how this could be problematic in terms of colonialism, because I mean, what can end up happening is Europeans could come in and say, okay, here the Native Americans are, here the Africans are, here the Asians are, here are a group of people who haven't cultivated and developed this land technologically the way we perceive it, the definition of cultivate, or being developed. And then they can say, well, this is ours. This is mine.
Yeah.
Because I mix my labor with it. And you never mixed your labor with it, so it's mine. And, I can, see, like the reaction of Native Americans, like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, we've enjoyed this land for like millennia. My forefathers and the flowers are our sisters. The eagles are our brothers. And you say you own it now? Like this, it's a confusion to them, right?
And the Native Americans said, we belong to the land, not the other way around.
Correct. So I mean, this idea. Look, but I do think that there is. I don't think that the Native American tribes would take away from the idea that there's value in mixing your energy and effort into something. I think you would be acknowledged and valued, for example, if you are someone who's able to make spears,
Right.
or bow and arrows. I think that they would respect craftsmanship and artisanship.
Yes. Yeah. Those are that's your property, according to Native Americans. Your spear, your arrows that you make, the food that you hunt, those belong to you, but the land does not.
Now, one of the things you got to be mindful of when talking about lot, and this guy didn't cover it, okay?
Okay.
There are certain provisions and limitations written into his understanding of property, okay? There's a waste proviso, okay, or a provision.
Mm-hmm.
You can't take from nature more than you can use before it spoils.
Right.
So let's say, for example, there's an apple tree, and you spent all day gathering apples, and it's fine. I mean, you mix your labor into the process of gathering all these apples. But what if you can't eat them all?
Yeah.
You can't hold on to that which you cannot use. So if other people can use it, then effectively you forfeit your right to hold on to all of that property.
Right.
Okay? Because you can't use it. Okay? So whatever it is that you cannot use, you cannot acquire. Okay? So that's one proviso. Okay? And another proviso related to, and this is John Locke, the architect of what, the classical liberal theory of property. And this is what, like, a lot of, classical economists, they don't discuss this shit, okay? Another proviso that he has is that you have to leave enough and as good, of the commons for others.
Mm.
So this basically implies that in your appropriation, you can't leave people off in a worse position in terms of their being able to also access common resources. Okay? Now, this is Locke. This is not even fucking Marx at all. You get what I'm saying?
Mm. Yeah.
So this is Locke. But you can see how Marx would take this idea and derive from it potentially, his concept of fairness related to property acquisition and, socialism and thereafter communism. Okay?
Right.
Now, personally, I am not a communist. So before a motherfucker start, saying Gigi's a commie, he wants to take all your money. First of all, you ain't got shit for me to take nowhere. I'm just saying, I'm just saying. But and I want to respond to this question from Rael. He says, if natives didn't own the land, how could they enter into treaties regarding land? I mean, Native Americans did not perceive themselves as owners of land in the way that we perceive ourselves as owners of land today.
No.
Like little individual plots of land, where like I carve myself off from my tribe, and I say, you can't come here. You can't impose your demands on me. You can't ask anything of me related to this little plot right here. Like they didn't think like that. Okay, this is a fabrication of Western Europe, and Western Europeans didn't think like this for like centuries. Okay, it took the Enlightenment era, and it took, like this whole concept of natural rights in order for them to begin to think this way. Okay, so it's just, if you don't believe me, go read, because the period prior to the Enlightenment was, the Dark Ages, the medieval period, and there was the divine right of kings, and peasants didn't own a damn thing. Now, they might have had houses, but they definitely didn't own land.
No.
Okay? They didn't own horses or sheep. I mean, they might have had things apportioned to them, and they use it in service of the king. But in terms of like things being their own private property, that did not exist. Okay?
In other words, the clan or the tribe or the natives thought of the land that they occupied, that they're occupying a part of the land. It's their territory that they occupy, just like anybody else. But the thing is, they don't have the same concept of land ownership that we do.
Now they did have a concept of territory. Now,
Yes.
like, I mean, even animals mark their territory.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, but there's a difference between marking off your territory and establishing boundaries, and then
Right.
having a concept of property in the way that we do today.
Yeah.
But ultimately, all I'm saying is that there are provisions related to John Locke and what it is that you can actually appropriate from nature. Okay, you can't take more than what you can use, and you have to leave some stuff for other people. Okay, you can't just be like, it's all mine. You know, like if I forget who it was, like it was a Bugs Bunny or Warner Brothers cartoon, and one of the characters like mine, all mine.
Right. Mine.
No,
Yeah.
you can't do that. Okay, so the law of commons, like it's not something that Locke explicitly laid out, but it is a concept that he intertwines with his views on property rights, and it represents the shared resources that
Right.
all human beings have a natural right to access. So
Yeah.
let's say, for example, there's a stream somewhere, and there's drinking water that you can, pull from, right, at the stream. One motherfucker can't come up, according to the law of commons, one person can't say, this is my stream,
Yeah.
because you can't use it all, okay? But I mean, today, of course, we have different ways of thinking about property. So somebody, might own at least a portion of a stream where nobody else can access it, okay? Or a lake for that matter, right? Like this lake is on my property, so that's my lake. You know what I mean? I've seen it. So, but anyway, so of course, like we said, the state of nature is this hypothetical state. All resources are held in common. All individuals are free to appropriate them through their labor, provided that they, adhere to the provisos above. But there's also something, I don't know if you ever heard of it, it's called the tragedy of the commons. Okay?
No. I don't think I'm aware of it.
So the tragedy of the commons it's an economic theory, actually, and it highlights the conflict between individual interest and the common good.
Okay.
So in the common setting, individuals acting in self-interest may actually deplete shared resources, leading to depletion or ruin, right? So the provisions that he put forth, like you can't waste, you can't appropriate, more than you could use, because that would be wasteful, and you have to leave some stuff for others. That is, the way that he tries to intervene on the tragedy of the commons. Assholes trying to take more than what they can or should. Okay. But one has to argue like this might not really actually apply to indigenous cultures, because communal ownership might be more of a model as opposed to individual ownership. Right.
Right. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And some people say, like this whole idea of appropriation in and of itself, it gives rise to like environmental degradation. The idea, I appropriate and mix my labor with, a plot of land and I own it. Some people say that, that's the first, it's the seed, the initial seed of environmental degradation. Okay. I mean, that's just what some people say. But the big thing that comes up, and I know that this comes into being, or into play with, you start talking about capitalism and communism, is when money becomes a medium of exchange. So this is prior to him, talking about or discussing money. Okay. Now, money is a medium, a means, right? That facilitates the exchange of goods, and it overcomes the limitations that are, imposed by the law of the commons or any provisos in his labor theory of property. Okay.
Right.
So it overcomes the waste proviso.
Okay.
So before money, individuals could only appropriate as much as they could use before it's spoiled. But when you get money involved, it's a durable, non-perishable entity.
Yes, a store of value. Yeah.
So people can sell excess goods for money.
Right.
Okay. And this allows for the accumulation of wealth beyond immediate needs without waste.
Right.
So this circumvents the waste proviso. So as soon as you get money involved, so we're talking about we've emerged out of the state of nature which is where property rights are supposed to come from, right?
Right.
So, but we've emerged out of it, and now we're dealing with like a full-fledged society which has artifices like money. Okay. Also, money allows for more complex economies, and it makes trade easier and more efficient. Right.
Right. It does. Yeah.
So this is going to increase production. It's going to lead to specialization, and it's going to lead to enhanced economic development in whatever state. I mean, this is why men initially began to use money. I mean, the ancient men have been using money like 5,000-10,000 years ago. Okay.
Yeah.
So whether it's coins, which like the Romans or the Egyptians used, or whether it's a fucking rock, or some sort of precious rock like emerald or ruby or gold or something like that.
Cowrie shells, all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
Okay. So, but it has an impact on the commons. So it changes the relationship between individuals and the commons. So with money allowing the accumulation of wealth, and by bypassing this waste proviso,
right,
the incentive to enclose and privatize common lands and resources it becomes a fever pitch, right? It's a race to get it all.
Get it all, yeah. Which is the enclosure thing. I think in the UK, in England, the enclosure. I think it was with the 16th century. I think just before Locke. I talk about the enclosure theory, where actually basically private ownership of the commons.
Right.
So if I put a fence around it and actually develop it, then it becomes mine instead of in common for the rest of the people.
And that's what white people do more than, I mean, boy, they are fucking notorious for that.
Yes.
Okay, enclosure and privatization is what white people do. Okay. So ultimately, this leads to the erosion of the commons. Okay?
Yes.
Because you get more resources being taken out of the common pool, and ultimately becoming private property. So then it becomes a who did it first type of thing. I was here first, and now you no longer have the proviso related to waste. So now I can just take as much as I can get. Okay, and then you get now. Of course, in nature there's inequality. We already know this, but it's exacerbated with the with the introduction of money. Okay, so it leads to greater inequality. Like, you can't get rid of inequality. I don't think I think it's an ineradicable feature of nature and human culture. Okay, I mean, people are not going to have the same positions. They're not going to have the same amount of respect. They're not going to have the same amount of capacities and abilities. That's just my viewpoint, right? Now, it doesn't mean that people who have less capacities and abilities ought to be treated like absolute shit. I don't believe that. But I mean, different people have varying degrees of competencies, right, and abilities. That's okay. But with the accumulation of money, those with the ability, to appropriate and trade resources, they can get more wealth, right? While a lot of other people might find themselves excluded from what was once considered the commons. Okay, so I used to be able to come out here and hunt, but now I can't because you closed off. You closed it off. Okay. Yeah. Again, the environmental impact and so on and so forth. But I think ultimately, I think what Marx is going to end up trying to do is to recapture the essence of the laws of the commons related to what's going on in the political economy of Europe during the Industrial Revolution. Now, that's just my guess. Okay, but I think it's a pretty damn good educated guess of what he's trying to do here.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody dispute that, you can, but I think you'll be wrong, but okay. So I think he's trying to capture the essence of what like John Locke was discussing related to property, right? And to him, I mean, quite honestly, I think that he thinks that capitalists, like uber wealthy people, are stealing the property because you own yourself. The only thing that you actually can, own more than anything else is your own labor.
Right.
But I think he's arguing that you have a class of persons who are stealing
the
labor.
Yeah, from people. Yeah.
and then you're separating people's spirit from the work that they do. And
Yeah.
to him, that's like the worst thing that you could do to a human being, because you take away all of their recognition for being valuable and imparting their essence into something. Okay.
Yeah.
But also one of the things that kind of interested me about all of this is like the model of, okay, so that, I don't know if you know, like prior to the Industrial Revolution, and even like up until like maybe like the 19th century, there was an artisan view of labor. Okay, so what do I mean by this? You're a craftsman. Okay, you're a blacksmith. You're a carpenter. You are any number. You're a cobbler, and you control and regulate your own work. Okay, there's not a managerial class who stands above and over you, watching you do this work. And I think this guy covers this in this presentation. But so we moved away, like during the height of the Industrial Revolution and the capital movement, we move away from an artisan perspective on labor and skill acquisition to like, you're just a cog in a wheel, you know?
Yeah. A point on the assembly line. Yeah.
And you don't get to see the full picture of what it is that you're working on.
Right.
It's like you're kept away from the various aspects of what it is you're actually contributing to, and what you're mixing your labor with.
And you don't get the full fruits of your labor, which is what Marx was actually arguing.
Right. So even like, say for example, before Henry Ford, the assembly line is notorious for this, right? So some people say, the assembly line is like a hallmark of efficiency and productivity. It's like the greatest thing since sliced bread. It expedites the production and manufacturing of products and things of this nature.
Yeah.
But the point is, like once upon a time, like cars were made like by like a team of maybe like 4 or 5 people. They'd sit there and they make one by themselves.
Yeah.
And they can look at it and say, okay, I made this car. Okay. Like from start to finish. And they can be proud of it. I don't know if you've ever made anything, but like, have any of you out there ever made something and said, after having finished making it, I made this. I'm proud of this shit. Whether it be like if you're like a guy who likes to make tables, or you got your own like little carpentry, jig in your garage or whatever the case may be, or if you make barbecue pits, or like if you rebuild a vehicle or something like that, you paint it up, you get it to looking nice. So the idea is that like what you mix your labor into, you are proud of. Like I made that, So back in the day, like if you're a blacksmith and you make swords, you could be like, those are my swords, the finest swords in the land.
Right. Yeah.
If you're a carpenter, you're like, I built these homes, like I made this house, or, I helped build this church, or whatever the case may be. But he's saying like in an assembly line, like the workers don't get to see that. They don't get to feel as if they've actually, contributed towards the development or the creation of something that they can be proud of. Okay. But I'm kind of jumping the gun here, but let's show some more of this.
Liberalism, representative democracy, and private property ownership were spreading, which meant that capitalism was spreading. And it also meant that monarchy and feudalism were clearly on the way out. So this is a time period that was dominated by classical liberalism, which meant that the governments at the time were especially non-interventionist, at least compared to modern standards. So there wasn't much in the way of, say, workplace regulations.
And this is important, okay? So Marx, a lot of people think that Marx is very pernicious, like he is jealous and envious. First of all, I think that Marx, just by his birth and his position, I think he's a member of the bourgeoisie himself.
He was.
I don't even want to get into all that, but the point is, because look how he's writing and the shit he's talking about. Like motherfuckers that are working in a factory don't have time to do that.
No.
You get what I'm saying? So at any rate, let's look. But the whole point is, he's seeing people working at a time when there's like no workplace breaks, like there's no like occupational safety hazard standards.
Right.
There's no child labor laws. Like, there's no paid vacation or anything like this. It's like, you got fucking kids, man, like 7, 8 years old working in textile mills.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm pretty sure he's like observing this, like, this is some fucking bullshit.
Yeah, yeah, and then when they then cast on the street if they were useless. So
And then, of course, working in a textile mill, that's dangerous work, man.
yeah,
I mean, those machines could take your fingers, or your limbs off.
your life. There are a lot of people died in those factories.
So he's operating during a time when there aren't very many governmental, regulations related to how the work in, factories is actually conducted. Because the governments haven't created the bureaucracies yet to deal with these kind of issues, right? So let's move forward.
And liberals were looking around and they were feeling pretty good about the society that they created. They thought that they had brought on this new era of freedom and prosperity. But Marx was looking around and he was deeply critical. And the nature of his critique was both philosophical and economic. For starters, this industrial capitalist society that Marx was looking at featured the division of labor, which meant that we were moving away from an artisanal approach to work, where one person would work on one thing. And instead, we were moving towards an assembly line approach to work, where many people would work on one thing.
I talked about that.
The philosophical side of Marx believed that the division of labor was causing a loss of meaning in the lives of industrial workers because they didn't have agency over their work lives. So if you go back to the artisanal style of work, say like being a blacksmith, you'd probably be able to dictate your own work life. You could dictate maybe when you show up to work, or maybe you'd have creative control over whatever process you're using to make whatever you're trying to make. And you would also probably have ownership over the products that you're creating. So at the end of the day, you'd get to keep whatever inventory you made, either for yourself or to sell it. But industrial workers have their labor directed by management, telling them when to show up and what to do while they're at work, and basically making them into machines. And they also don't get to keep the products of their labor. These industrial workers are working on a part of a product. So they are creating property through their work, but they're not actually getting to keep any of it. So they're not gaining ownership over the products of their labor. So Marx called this type of work alienated labor. Here's Marx describing the alienation of labor. He's not exactly someone that's known for brevity, but I think it's worth reading this passage in its entirety. What constitutes the alienation of labor? First, that the work is external to the worker, that it is not part of his nature, and that consequently, he does not fulfill himself in his work, but denies himself, has a feeling of misery rather than well-being, does not develop freely his mental and physical energies, but is physically exhausted and mentally debased. The worker, therefore, feels himself at home only during his leisure time, whereas at work, he feels homeless. His work is not voluntary, but imposed, forced labor.
Now, look, I'm not here to get into a big argument, about, what kind of work is better than others, or, agricultural, industrial-based work or anything like that. All I'm trying to do is argue what, Marx is actually, what he thinks he's doing. A lot of people think that they understand Marx, but they haven't read any Marx at all. And I find that deplorable in a Western developed society where people get to weigh in on ideas and concepts that they don't know shit about because they haven't read anything. I'm just being honest, you know what I mean? Like, to me, it's just, it's unconscionable that people would claim that they know something, but they've never read anything related to it. Like, Marx wrote something called On the Jewish Question. People, they just haven't read it. Or He wrote something, called The Grundrisse, okay? Nobody's read it. He wrote German ideology. Nobody's read it. He wrote Capital, right? And the Manifesto. Nobody's read it, but they have all of these ideas about what the fuck he means. Like, how can you know what he means if you haven't read anything that he's written? You just know, it just don't work. Like, I just, I'm not even saying the guy's right. Okay, I think he errs. Like, I think philosophers err all the time. Okay, and I think he's one of them that does. But at least I read what he's written, so I can say, okay, well, here's where I think he errs. This is where I think he goes wrong. You motherfuckers just, you believe what, the United States tells you, oh, communism's bad. Oh, fuck the commies. And I just think that's naive. I think that's some bullshit. Okay, and I'm not saying that everyone is in this pool or in that same boat, but I think that too large of a share of persons are, and they haven't actually read his work to understand what he's actually trying to articulate. But I think ultimately what Marx is trying to say is this: man produces himself through the kind of work he does, and this balls from Locke. You are what you make. Okay. Human beings are animals at work.
Right.
And this is our distinguishing characteristic, and it separates us from animals. Okay? So what does an animal do? An animal consumes nature as it is.
Yeah.
Okay? And are consumed by it. Okay? Humans, on the other hand, produce from nature what they need. Okay? So what is production? Ultimately, it's altering nature and adapting it to human needs.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, there are animals like beavers who can build dams. Okay. And there are animals who use tools, but not in the sophisticated manner in which we do. Okay.
Right.
Beavers can build dams, but only by instinct. They don't build better dams. You don't see fucking concrete dams. Beavers like, let me figure out how to fucking improve upon this design here.
Mix some mud with some sand and make
right.
Okay.
And Slick Rick, man, nobody's saying that you don't read, motherfucker. Nobody said that you were the one who hasn't read. But tell me whether or not you've actually read Marx.
Have you read it, Slick Rick?
That's the question. Have you read Marx? That's the question. Look, we know you've read. Have
Obviously.
you read Marx? That's the thing. So ultimately, I don't agree with Marx, okay? But ultimately, in order to produce something or to alter something at the scale at which human beings do, it requires cooperation, okay? And that is going to imply a particular kind of social relationship, okay? And then also, Marx says this: the mode of work that you engage in is going to determine the mode of the society that you're living in, okay? So, like, for example, well, let me explain it this way.
Okay.
So you got fixed drives in humans, right? Or basic drives, which come from nature, and then you have relative drives, okay? So a fixed drive is like hunger or sex, okay? Natural drives, right? They're fixed. But relative drives are going to basically be derived from the way our society is set up and arranged, right? And the social structures and the institutions we have.
Yeah.
So
makes
like
sense.
a drive for having a drive for Jordans, or of BMW, or the latest iteration of an iPhone. That's a relative drive. There's no natural drive for that. But there is a natural drive for hunger and sex, okay? So the way we see the world, okay, and the way we rank things according to their value, and even the way we see ourselves, is a reflection of how we produce things to meet our needs. So this is Marx, okay? Which I don't think is wrong. I think that's right. So let's say, for example, a Viking. That person is going to have an entirely different way of viewing the world, and is going to have an entirely different value system than a farmer farming in the 20th century in America. All right? One thinks that you acquire, goods and, wealth by conquering and shit like that, right? Taking shit.
Yeah.
Whereas, a 20th century farmer is going to think the cultivation of the land is the way that, you work, you go to, or the way you work towards accumulating wealth. It's a totally different way of viewing culture and society. Okay. But so ultimately, this is Marx. We're animals at work. Okay. And it differentiates us, from insects, other animals, because they work too, okay? But we plan our works in our mind before we start it, we can plan and improve our activity, and we can find better ways of doing the work that we do.
Right.
Okay, we can make progress in that work. Okay, and we work to get an edge over nature, so that we can be better freed from its harshness or its vicissitudes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when we find better ways of working, we make work itself and the way we relate to one another in it more fulfilling and satisfying. That's what we do. Okay. I went to work today. It was satisfying for me to make what I made or to build what I build. Like you can tell when somebody slapped some shit together and they didn't enjoy the work that they were doing. And somebody like, say, for example, a craftsman in a guild doing like even like the 17th of the 16th century working on a church, or like people building mosques, during like the Saracen period in Spain or something of that nature. You can see that work was done with plan and foresight and love and dedication. It wasn't just I'm just slapping this shit up. You get what I'm saying? So work in this viewpoint, it should lead to fulfillment, freedom, and the development of skills that other people can look on and say, okay, that's valuable to me, right? But what Marx is saying is that when you put people on assembly lines and then, you force them to work under harsh conditions,
Right.
and they don't get to look at the work that they're doing and they're just a cog in a machine, they're not developing any skills. They're not being perceived as valuable. The work that they're doing is like something that anybody could do. Whereas like the artisan view of work is like it takes time, years, maybe decades to develop the skills commensurate with being an expert or a journeyman in a specific craft or something like that. But according to this model, it's like you could take anybody, throw them in, even a kid, right? Throw them in the slot, make them do the work, and then only a small, narrow group of people get to benefit from that kind of economic arrangement. So that's the kind of thing that he's opposing, okay? Now, personally, I think there's some value to that, right? In my viewpoint, okay? Now, do I think he takes it too far? And does he make assumptions about how things are going to like pan out in the end? I think so. I think he does so inaccurately, okay? But I think ultimately what he's trying to do is preserve the notion of property developed by Locke originally.
Yeah.
Okay?
Which I would agree with the way Locke actually puts it. I would agree with.
Yeah, so John Locke is going to say, again, just as like a rehashing this all out. And I know this is not the greatest, like the most interesting subject at all. We got like maybe 15 more minutes related to this. But the whole idea is, for Locke, the way that you own or come to own something is by mixing your labor with it, okay? And by doing so, you put a piece of yourself in it, okay? And that is to him what defines private property, putting yourself into something, okay? Through your effort, your energy, and your labor, okay? But, I mean, think about property today. That's not how people perceive property.
No, it's not even close. Yeah, it's far from where it used to be.
It's just what you can pay for. I mean, with cash, and I don't have a problem with that. My whole thing is, and I talked about this earlier. That's why I like Heidegger so much, because Heidegger understands like what technology and what the systems of economic work, like the model, what it exacts on a human being. Okay?
Right.
What it does is it takes away our ability to develop skills and the ability to have like some sort of intentional love of what it is that we're engaged in, right? So ultimately, he says it's a lack of authenticity. He puts it in existential terms, but
okay.
So this is what he says.
I'd agree with it. I would agree with that. You can see as we go get more complex, we're more divorced away from nature and more divorced away from our work, even even now.
So yeah, so like Heidegger would say something like, and I'm not gonna say I like all of Heidegger, but I love like some of the things that he says. Like to him, like there's something called Gestell, which is loosely translated into English as in framing, right? And it borrows, I think, from like what Marx says about like how work impacts and affects who you are. Okay,
Right.
But I think that like Heidegger takes this and puts it on philosophy and metaphysics, whereas Marx would just keep it in the domain of work. I know that's abstract, but just follow me with it. Anyway, he says technology reveals the world to us in a certain kind of way. It inframes or shapes the way we see the world.
Yeah.
So nature and objects are seen as resources to be optimized and utilized.
Right.
And it leads like this, everywhere you look, this is what the world looks like to you. Okay.
Yeah.
I gotta optimize. I have to, I gotta utilize it. Okay. There's nothing that just is able to sit and have value on its own.
Right.
Like I have to take, it's like, I think he says it, everything is standing reserve. Like the mountain is something I need to chop down and cut down and mine for its resources.
Yeah.
The lake is something I have to, or the river is something I have to make into a dam.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not something that exists on its own and has value on its own accord. It's something that I have to harness and optimize and utilize for my own purposes. Right?
Yeah. I have to shape it to my needs because we're builders, we're shapers, so we're supposed to go out and shape nature to our specifications. In other words.
And then he says it leads to what he considers like a loss of authenticity. So,
Yeah.
so for Heidegger, technology in this way, or in this mode, it basically conceals more profound ways of looking at the world, which I think other traditions and cultures have a way of doing. Like Native Americans did not think everything was standing reserve or everything had to be optimized, right? But I think even with Locke, you see like the initial idea that, okay, well, you mixing your labor with something means that you impart value to it, like, and that outside of the context of you doing something with it, it has no value, right? So there's that. But I don't even want to get too far deep off into it. But there are other ways of looking at the world, like traditional craftsmanship. There's a deep connection between the artisan and the work.
Yeah.
So the creation is a way of bringing something beautiful out of what you're doing. Now you can contrast that with technological processes today, and it's like take for example building a subdivision. Like you got workers out there, they don't give a fuck about like doing anything other than meeting the specifications and the plans that are written down on a piece of paper, right?
Yeah. Right.
Whereas like say for example like a traditional Japanese carpenter might like actually go out and look for the wood from actual trees.
He
right?
would. Yeah.
Whereas like, guys like carpenters in this culture are like, shit, I'm going to Home Depot. What kind of, man, we're getting it the cheapest wood we can get. Putting them, slapping this boy up.
And maximizing your profit.
And that's the only concern, right?
Right.
Whereas like for the traditional, craftsman or like carpenter is not thinking in terms of just, well, how much money can I get? You know what I mean? Also, he says that it creates a reduction in human capacity. So when you start mechanizing processes, it diminishes the need for human skills. We're seeing that today, right? AI, right?
Oh,
so
yeah.
you're diminishing the need for human skills, creativity, and engagement. So then the question is, what's left for human beings to do?
Yeah.
Like the work used to be, think about how satisfying it would be to be an artisan working on something and you're becoming an expert craftsman by doing that work, as opposed to, you just go to work and you just pull a lever or some shit, or, like you just
hit a button or, whatever you do. Yeah.
Right. So he says like technology is setting, it sets up a system where you lose the opportunity to develop meaning and satisfying skills. Because doing something that's difficult that nobody else can do and people enjoying what it is that you're doing, I mean, it creates value, right? But what happens when that kind of work is lost? Okay.
Yeah.
And the last thing that I'm gonna say is like this whole concept of instrumental reasoning, which is endemic to capitalism. It's endemic to technological advancement. Is like, okay, efficiency and functionality override every other human value.
Right.
You even even human life would be perceived as like less valuable than producing more efficiency and functionality.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? You'll put people at risk. Throw them in harm's way. Like I need more output. Like, dude, like, come on, man. You got fucking kids putting their fingers in like machines, and they could kill them. You know what I mean? Like also you can make some bread.
Yeah.
Like, come on, bro. Like, so you can do what? Make some cash? More money?
Yeah.
Like, that's a boy's life. But that's less. But when you start to think instrumentally, the only concerns are like you just getting that paper, getting that cash.
Yeah. Okay? And basically getting more than you need.
Now, but one thing I do like about Heidegger is that he doesn't say, let's just reject technology altogether. But he's saying, look, there are ways to overcome. It's like, don't be obsessed with it. You know what I'm saying? It's like sex is good, right?
Right.
But you can't fuck all day, every day. You understand what I'm saying? Like, drinking is good. But you can't get drunk all day, every day. You can't even enjoy drinking if all you do is drink.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Technology is a great thing. But it can't be your only orientation to the world. It's a great orientation when it's used in moderation. But when you overdo it, it becomes problematic. And I think that's...
When you mix it in with the drive for profits, that's when it becomes problematic.
Right.
It's not should it be done on behalf of people, like building homes. You can build, every person in America should be able to be housed. Should be no homeless people in the street at all, because you have more than enough money.
I don't think there should be.
And more than enough money, more than enough technology, more than enough materials that you build everybody a house. The thing is, you can't maximize your profit if you do that.
But I mean, that's what happens when you move from a system of commons and you introduce the concepts of private property. But I mean, before there was private property related to individuals and appropriation by means of the labor theory of value, you had property owned by the king or nobles or some shit like that. So, I mean, we've always been involved in a situation in which somebody owned more than the lowly.
Yeah, hierarchy. Yeah, but the king is supposed to own, the property in common for the subjects of the people. But, endowed on him by God. In other words, the king owned it, but he didn't own it himself. His own as a steward of his people.
Well, God owns it for real.
God owns it for real. Yeah.
God is the one who's in control of it all. Okay. So, and one could argue that, okay, the king is somebody who's supposed to be doing God. He's God's representative on earth.
Right. He's entrusted with God's people and God's property, for lack of a better term.
But hey, man, this has been I'm gonna cut this off. We're at 1:13.
Okay.
I don't want to go too deep into this. I just you said, are there any questions that you have? Because
no.
I kind of like I went on and rambled. But
the thing is, we have to connect with what because we read stuff, especially as far as liberalism and capitalism and stuff like that, and these words start to lose meaning of what they originally meant and what the original theory was about this kind of stuff. So, the idea of property was not so they can get, like you said, as much as you want. There should always be some kind of commons for people. Like property is supposed to serve people, not just serve individuals for profit. It's not supposed to be that way. And this stuff has gotten out of hand. And I think that's where we kind of lose our identity in this worldview of the drive for profits and get it as much as you can and squash the little guy, squash the person that's next to you. He's no good. He's useless. Actually kick him around the street so he can actually be homeless because he doesn't deserve to live. I said that's not what it's actually intended for. So it's kind of really gotten well away from where it was actually intended. Liberalism was never supposed to go this far. That's supposed to free the person from out underneath the bounds of the king, but not go this far where we're actually feeding upon ourselves as far as profits is concerned.
Yes. So in my opinion is why create a society that's supposed to be a reaction to hierarchy and the abuse of power, and just create another one, but the same kind of systems are being instituted, but just by different means.
Yeah,
I don't see, like, I just don't see, like, what's the point? Like, if you didn't like the king having absolute power over you, why would I like want a fucking rich asshole to have the same amount of power over me?
Right, with less responsibility to you. At least the king has some kind of responsibility to his subjects. Otherwise, he wouldn't be king anymore.
So I kind of agree with what George Steele says here. He said the king was exchanged for the corporation.
Yeah.
But what's the difference? Like, to me, it doesn't matter if it's a corporation, if it's an alien, if it's the king, if it's a religious figure. Like, if the form of ostracization and deprivation is the same, who cares what form it comes in? Right?
At least the king was supposedly charged with the welfare and benefit of his people, where the corporation is only charged with the benefit and the obsession of making more money and gaining more stuff. I think that might be the distinct difference.
But another interesting thing about all of this to me is that the average man loves this system, or is so indoctrinated into thinking that this system is the only form of human association and development, that they don't see any other possibilities. Like, this is the summum bonum. This is the thing that is the paramount value to have and to extol. And that's just absolute bullshit. And look, it's not just like Negroes like offering up, resistances to the system. Like, I mean, there are smart people who are members of the bourgeoisie themselves who are like, this is pretty fucked up. Like, Heidegger is rich. He was a Nazi too, but but I mean, like, Marx was a bourgeoisie. He was a member of the bourgeoisie.
Yeah.
Okay. There are people who can see, and it's a philosopher's job to point out inconsistencies and trouble spots in any, culture or whatever, what have you. But I want you to also see this, and this is a small, short segment of a video.
Okay.
And I gave you the link to it, but I don't know if you even had time to look at it.
I watched both of them. Yeah, I watched both of them. Yeah.
Simplify the compelling other idea.
It is this idea that the true job creators are middle-class customers, right? So Henry Ford economics is what we call it in part in this book. Henry Ford paid his line workers on the assembly lines more than he needed to when they were making Model Ts.
So they could buy the car.
Exactly. Not because he was an altruist, but because he wanted customers, right?
Right. And if you restructure the tax code and the way in which we build a society, not around people like me and Mitt Romney, but around ordinary middle-class consumers, not only will it be fantastic for them, but ultimately it will be fantastic for me. Here's a way of understanding it ecosystemically.
Okay, before you go there, tell me how you create this middle class and what it is that would be an action agenda to see the kind of emphasis on the middle class as job creators that would result in a better America.
Well, I mean, you first have to start by shifting the burden of the tax code back from the middle class to where all the money has gone, to the very tippy top.
I've been saying this, man. Like, people act like I'm saying something radical or Marxist. I'm not even trying. I don't even advocate Marxism. All I'm saying is this. But you can use Marxist ideas in order to make the case, right? That, look, why should it be the case that people who have the lowest incomes are paying more of what they do earn into a system, right, that's supposed to, like, uplift everyone, like, more than people who have the most money? Because they avoid paying taxes. They don't even have to pay taxes. And they have exorbitant amounts of money. So they pay only like 15 to 20% on their money, whereas the person who's working, they cannot escape paying 35% on their taxes.
Right.
And then you got to ask the question, how the fuck is this fair? I want somebody to explain it to me. Why should a person who makes $40,000 be paying more than fucking Donald Trump on his taxes?
Yeah, that makes sense.
I'm not saying that, you know, we should take rich motherfucker all their money. That's absurd. I don't even look, dude. That's not even the claim that's being made. All I'm saying is, can we at least have a fucking tax system to where the people at the top can pay their fair share? Because once they get a certain amount of money, they don't fucking buy goods and services.
No.
Because there's a limited amount of goods and services that they can use.
Yeah.
Like, they can only put on one pair of pants a day. They can only drive one car at a fucking time. They can only eat so much. They can only eat as much as one individual from any economic class. Okay? So they can't put back into a system and to keep the economy burgeoning.
Right.
They don't have the capacity to do it.
No.
Okay? However, if you expand the middle class and you make sure that they have, you know, the ability to buy shit, which is what the model was, like the Henry Ford model again, like they talk about. Like, damn, the dude made it such that the people who worked at his company could actually buy the shit that they were making. Not because, oh, I love these people and I want fairness. It's like, it's practical. Yeah. I want to be able to sell my fucking shit.
Yeah. Yep.
But now you got a system where you got people, man, the system has become tighter and tighter. We don't even have a manufacturing-based economy anymore. And that's what Trump promised to, like, lower class and middle class Americans, white America. Yeah. I'm going to resurge, the protectionism associated with tariffs and trade for Americans, and I'm gonna put like average working people back to work. That's what he was a populist president, but he made appeals to like Appalachian white folks. Like he was going to restore the mining industry and get rid of the regulations related to fracking and shit like this, so people who are in those industries can make money again.
Yeah.
But I mean, at the end of the day, it's like, come on, bro. Like, you're part of a fucking elitist economic class that you don't even fucking pay your fair share. Like, and he came out and told Hillary Clinton as much. Like, but the people on the left are the same way, man. They're playing the same game.
They hide their hand though.
So this is not about. It's not about trying to steal from rich people. It's about rich people not stealing from poor people. I mean, if you take into consideration the whole concept of the labor theory of value,
right?
What are you motherfuckers working? What are y'all doing? What are you putting your effort and energy into? Today, the economy is driven largely by financialization instruments.
Yeah.
Now, how's that work, man? Like, explain to me what type of work that is. I'm just asking. I'm asking the question. Like, what?
It's an extraction value without putting anything in. You're not building. You're not building the homes. You're not building the apartments. What you're doing is financializing and taking the interest rates and you're extracting wealth out of from the people, not out of the system.
Or you're pooling together debt, collateralized, fucking instruments where like, okay, well, I'm gonna pay. Well, I'm gonna buy that debt and hike up the interest rate on that debt.
Exactly. It's to extract more money from the people.
It's like, this is not the model. All I can say is this shit is heading for another fucking crash.
Yes, it is.
Don't know when it'll happen, but like, we can't go on in this way. You can't.
Yep. If you can only kick the can down the road so far.
Because right now we got a financialized economy. There's inflation.
Yeah.
I just, look, at the end of the day, like, I'm gonna let them tell it, because he's a fucking millionaire. Got way more money than I ever have had.
Bring tax rates on rich people and corporations back to historic levels, right? So, when Reagan was elected, somebody like me had a tax burden in the range of 35%. Today,
right.
Somebody like me with an 8-figure annual income, I paid 11% last year.
Jesus
right?
Christ.
It's
wow.
absolutely.
Is that because most of your income was investment income?
Absolutely, because capitalists like me pay 15% on capital gains, 15% on dividends, and 15% on carried interest, right? You give a little bit of money away, and now you're down to a very low level.
And people who work with their hands pay
35%, right?
Right.
Here's a very interesting thing: is it when capitalists, when people like me call themselves job creators, it sounds like what we're doing is describing how the economy works, but there's actually something far more interesting going on. What we're actually doing is making a claim on status and privilege, because if you were the creator, right? Obviously, this language wasn't chosen by accident. You were very much at the center of the economic universe.
You're a fucking god, actually. You're a god of money and value creation. I mean, who else calls himself a creator other than God? So having said that, man, I'm gonna make myself small and be ready to get up out of here, man. Anybody got anything to say? You can say it now.
Forever hold your peace, or at least till tomorrow.
Actually,
Anybody to thank that you haven't thanked yet?
oh yes, sir. I'm sorry about that, man. You know, man, I get to talking, man, and then the time just goes by so fast.
You gotta acknowledge your blessing, man.
Sure do. You're right about that, man. So shout out to Dr. Thunder again. He said soaking up the knowledge. I did that one already, but shout out to Hurricane Greg. Thank you so much, sir. Shout out to Adrian Thomas. He says waiting on that Green Gorilla Manifesto to drop on Amazon.
I heard that.
Hey, come on, man. I ain't gonna do that one, bro. But anyway, shout out to Joe from DC. Says second to vote for BMU, Black Male University.
Here.
Actually, there is a Black Male University out there. Dr. Tia Sign Johnson has it, man. The Black Male Institute. Go check that shit out. All right. Shout out to Black Wizard ADOS. He says the BGS tax, GG tax. Appreciate your work, gentlemen. Shout out to you. Shout out to Aaron Smith. He says thank you, GG and BGS. Black Wizard ADOS says we're ironically so far from nature nowadays that the spirit and the concepts are lost. Most people are focused on the words. So corporations punking you out is fine because the document says government, LOL, laughing out loud. And then he also says, if you think the way investments work now are crazy, you should read about what they want to do with crypto soul-bound tokens.
I don't even want to know what that is.
What the hell is that, man? Soul-bound tokens?
Soul-bound.
Like some shit like...
I don't even know what.
Like Spawn or something? Like you taking
you're taking souls out, huh? Or selling your soul to crypto, huh?
Yeah, but I mean, look, again, all I'm saying is, like, look, you got poor people, man, paying the burden. They have a bigger financial burden than people who are wealthy. That shit just doesn't make sense to me, man.
Yeah. That's how you extract more wealth out of the people, just like a bad king would back in the day with taxes and stuff like that. It's where they extracted more wealth out of the common folks.
And the middle class is not growing right now. The middle class is
it's shrinking.
It's shrinking.
Yeah. It's shrinking, yeah.
And it's shrinking because wealthier people ain't putting their fair share in. They're not investing in the American public.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, and then as the interest rates goes up, middle class people start losing their wealth, which is their houses, their homes, and stuff like that. So,
go figure. Go figure, man. I know people, man, having trouble paying the taxes to their houses. I mean, that's a problem. You know what I'm saying? That's a problem.
Yeah. Especially older people that are retired. Yeah.
You know, that's the issue. But anyway, man, thank you, BGS, for joining. I know today is not, conversation about Keisha or, other. Sometimes we got to do something else other than that. So that's not all.
Well, the thing is that, we hear these terms thrown around, right? And we don't understand what they mean or where they came from. And sometimes they get misappropriated. So things, we have to ground it back into what do these things actually mean? Like when you talk about property and labor and what Marx really said, because there's a lot of stuff is actually a lot of misinformation out there. So you have to get back to what these things actually mean.
And also, let me just say this, man. If you're not part of the 1% or the 2% or the 3% or 4 or 5%, if you're not that motherfucker, this should not have any. This should be of no worry to you. Nobody's gonna take your money. Nobody's gonna tax you more. You ain't making enough money.
No.
You're not that motherfucker. But I mean, I guess people like to imagine that they are that motherfucker.
You're killing the dream, Gigi. You're killing the dream, man.
Man, I mean, it's one thing to dream, but it's another thing to be delusional.
Hey, black women have their version, we have ours, right?
Yeah. Hold on. So look, this is what Black Wizard says it is. Your data attached to an NFT with algorithms that predict your behaviors, and the upper class can bet on or short your token depending on what they think you might. This is some Hunger Games type shit, man. That's some next level shit right there. That's like the movies, like, you know, with, you remember who used to be the Family Feud host? What was his name?
Oh, yeah, and he used to do when he did the Running Man, and he used to bet on
with Schwarzenegger.
Yeah, the Running Man.
What is the old cat that used to fucking run Family Feud?
I can't remember his name. I know what you're talking about. The English guy, yeah, the Running Man, yeah.
God, how can I not know that?
Yeah.
Man, it goes to show you, man, how things can change, man. Because now I can only Richard Dawson. That's it,
Yeah,
Richard Dawson, man.
yeah. And Hogan's Heroes. That's right. Before that, yeah.
Because now you can only think of Steve Harvey, which you know, it's country ass nigga doing Family Feud, man. But I like Steve Harvey, man, to some degree. But anyway, man, look. We're going to close this out, man. I think Dr. Johnson's going to go ahead and get down, so I'm going to check him out. Thank you, BGS, for joining me. Thank you, everybody, this afternoon and this evening for joining me. Now, Bob Barker is The Price is Right.
Price is Right, yeah.
Yeah, Richard Dawson was that guy, man, for Family Feud, so, yeah. But anyway, man, I'll holler at y'all later. And look, speaking of Family Feud, not Bob Barker.
Here we go.
Anyway, man, I'll holler at y'all later. Hey, man, thank you so much for joining, man. I'll holler at y'all on the next one. Peace.
All right, peace out.